Thank you. Tonight we feature the singing talents of Ronan Keating, Kiki Dee and Robbie Williams, brought together to celebrate a superstar of modern popular music. He made his debut 30 years ago and he's still going strong. He's sold more than 220 million albums. He's been knighted, he's won an Oscar, he's written music for stage and screen, and of course, hit songs, including Candle in the Wind, which is the world's best-selling single. Not bad for a man of whom a BBC tribunal once said, and I quote, "We don't think this singer doing his own weird material is right for radio at present." Well, they didn't realise they were auditioning a legend. Ladies and gentlemen, Sir Elton John.
It's a little bit funny, this feeling inside. I'm not one of those who can easily hide. Don't have much money, but boy, if I did, I'd buy a big house where we both could live.
I was a sculptor, but then again, no, or a man who makes potions in a traveling show. I know it's not much, but it's the best I can do. My gift is my soul, and this one's for you. You can tell everybody that this is your song. It may be quite simple, but now that it's done, I hope you don't mind, I hope you don't mind that I put down in words
how wonderful life is while you're in the world.
I sat on the roof and kicked off the moss with a few of the verses. Well, they got me quite cross, but the sun's been quite kind while I wrote this song. It's for people like you that keep it turned on.
So excuse me for getting, but these things I do, you see, I've forgotten if they're green or they're blue. Anyway, the thing is, what I really mean, well, yours are the sweetest eyes I've ever seen. And you can tell everybody that this is your song. It may be quite simple, but now that it's done, I hope you don't mind, I hope you don't mind that I put down in words how wonderful life is while you're in the world.
I hope you don't mind, I hope you don't mind that I put down in words
how wonderful life is while you're in the world.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, that's a hit. That's a hit from way back, isn't it? 1970?
1970.
1970. That was the first big hit you had, wasn't it?
In America first, and then in Britain afterwards, yes.
How did you come to write that song with Bernie?
I was actually talking to Laurie Holloway before the show. I wrote it... We lived in my mum and stepfather's flat in Northwood Hills, and I wrote it in the sitting room, and Bernie was in the bedroom. We've never collaborated on a song together. We've never been in the same room. And I finished it, and I was very excited because I knew that was... We'd written a lot of songs before that, but this was the first really special song. And I wrote it very quickly, and I went into Bernie and said, come and listen to this. And then I played it to my mum and to my stepdad, and we were very excited because we thought, you know, we've cracked it. We've finally written a good song.
What point did the BBC Tribunal assess you? I mean, I did love that. I came across in research. I mean, this is what they said, that he has a thin, piercing voice. And then he said, we don't think this singer with his own weird material is right for radio at present. And then it says, writes dreary songs.
Well, it's about the same as now. I can't get played on radio now. When was that? 6 weeks ago?
Now, that song there, of course, is from the new album, which is a nostalgic trip for you, in fact, because we recorded it at your favourite venue, which is Madison Square
Madison Square Garden.
It works very well, too, because, I mean, it reminds us all of the catalogue of songs. And in a trip, it's all our yesterdays as well, in a sense. You know?
Yeah, and that's good. But, you know, as an artist, you're always thinking about what you've written, the latest thing you've written, and you want to move on, but you can't ignore the catalogue that you've got. And we filled it up with people that we love, like Kiki and Ronan and Billy Joel, Bryan Adams, Mary J. Blige, and a young girl called Anastasia, who's just had a hit here, who's great. And it was fun. We made something that I didn't originally want to do or didn't seem so keen about doing. Fun, and it worked, thank God.
You didn't throw a tantrum, did you, when things didn't go right on stage?
I did say I was going to retire.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
I read that, yes.
Yeah. And the next night I did say I was full of shit.
And that's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah, but you weren't. You're concentrating so hard for it to go, and you know it's being recorded, so in a way you're not really concentrating on or communicating with the audience. And if you have technical problems like I did with the first number, and your monitors go off, it's hard. And it was just a series of frustrations. And as most people know, I'm a perfectionist, and it really got to me.
But why did you go and work here? I mean, since we last met, let's update ourselves. You've had a pacemaker fitted.
I have.
You have?
Yes.
So tell us about, what happened?
It's here. It's very good.
It's just banging away. Can you feel it?
What happened was, last year, I was on holiday in the south of France, and I was doing shows, and I was due to go to do a show in Brescia in Italy, and it was lunchtime, and I'd played tennis in the morning. It was very hot, and I was down in Nice, and I felt very giddy, and I had to lie down, and the doctor was called, and he thought I had sunstroke. And the next day, I was due to go to David and Victoria Beckham's wedding. And I was on the plane, but I didn't feel like private jet that was going to go to Dublin. I was going to play at the wedding, and I didn't feel very well going to the airport. And on the plane, I kind of half collapsed. They had to give me oxygen, and they took me by ambulance to a heart hospital in Nice. And that evening, I flew home to London. I had 3 days of tests, and the baby came out fine. No, but the thing. I went back. After 3 days of tests, they put this thing on me like a tape recorder, and they monitored my heart for 24 hours. And they said it was fine. So I went back to Nice on the Thursday morning, and then I thought, oh, great, it's fantastic. I can have a holiday, I'm fine. And they thought it was an inner ear infection, which meant I'd lost my balance. And so I went down and started playing tennis. David came down, my partner David came down and said, Elton, you've got to come off the tennis court straight away. I said, why? He said, the doctor wants to talk to you. He said, they found something. I thought, oh, God. So I had to go back to England that night, or the next day, rather, first thing in the morning. They told me I had to have a pacemaker fitted because there was an irregularity in my heartbeat. And my grandmother had a pacemaker, so I wasn't afraid of that. It was just that I'd already assumed that I was on holiday, so I'd had to come all the way back. But you know what? I went in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the next day I was back in Nice. It was just very simple.
I mean, it's not slowed you down, obviously, because...
No, it's actually sped me up. It's the Energizer Bunny. Yes, yes. And I have to have it checked out occasionally. But they can do it's amazing. You can do it by phone. They can put a digital phone over you and wherever you are in the world, and they can check it out through a computer. So I'm the bionic woman. Thank you.
Let's look back on this extraordinary career of yours. I mean, you were a very musical child, weren't you? At the age of 3,
I was a musical child. My grandmother, I grew up with my grandmother and my mother at my grandmother's house in Pinner. And there was always a piano at the house, and there was always records on the gramophone. And my grandmother used to sit me on her knee, and I used to play the piano and picked up hymns. And I think the first thing I ever played was the Skater's Waltz.
How old were you?
3.
3.
And, but there was, my dad was a trumpet player, my mum loved music, my Auntie Wynne played the piano, and my grandmother loved music. So there was always, the radio was on, or we were playing records, or there was a piano there. So I grew up in a very musical kind of background. But by the time I was 13, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be involved in music, whether it was playing or, selling it, but, working in a record store. Music was, it'd been in me since I was 3. And, at a time when I used to, if my parents were home and they wanted time, I always used to disappear and listen to music on the radio or play records. I was kind of like an isolated child in lots of ways, and I just delved into music, and music became my passion. All sorts of music. I mean, not the sort of music a 6-year-old would listen to, like George Shearing, Nat King Cole, Tony Bennett, Frank Sinatra. I grew up with that. And, I was, as well as the pop music, which came in later. So I got a really good, I got a good grounding with good musicians.
I mean, I think I'm right in saying you once described what you've just described as an escape into music, in a sense, because you were unhappy at home, basically.
Well, it was, there was an atmosphere at home. My parents didn't get on well.
Yeah. And your father disapproved of you being a musician.
He didn't want me to be a musician.
He was a musician himself.
I've had a go at my father several times in print in the past, and when I got sober, I made my peace with him, and I realized there are 2 sides to every story, and I don't have anything to say bad about my father. He just wanted me to have a normal job. He was, this was a new era that was beginning, rock and roll. He didn't really think that, it was a good living. It was a good, things that would last for 20, 30 years, and that was a stable thing to do. So he wanted me to join the Air Force or be in a bank or whatever. He was just a concerned parent. My mother, on the other hand, just said, you can, if you really want to do this, give it a go. And I'm so grateful that I knew what I wanted to do at an early age. A lot of my friends went to college, university, got their degrees, and still didn't know what to do after they came out of university. So it is an advantage, and it's a risk. But I always say to people, if you want to do something and you want to do it badly enough, give it a try, because you can always say, well, I tried and I failed, or it didn't happen, but at least I tried.
Yes. And I suppose that the key moment in your life about this time would be meeting Bernie Taupin. I mean, how did you get together?
It was an advertisement in the New Musical Express, which said record company, Liberty Records, would like new songwriters and artists. So I wrote in as a songwriter and an artist. Now, I had written songs with my band, Bluesology, but I hadn't sung, really. And I went in there and they said, right, we're going to take you in a recording studio and sing a song. And the only song I knew was a Jim Reeves song from when I used to sing in the pub. So that went down like a lead balloon. But they did have, the guy, Ray Williams, who was there, said, I have on my desk a pile of lyrics from this guy in Lincolnshire. And I took them away. And I started writing songs to them before I even met Bernie. And then 6 months later, I met him. And I had written all these melodies to these songs. And it was great, because I knew I couldn't write lyrics very well. I didn't want to. And it was the perfect marriage. And it's been working that way ever since. But it's, it's just fate. It's like, shall I write into this and have a go? And I thought, I'm cheesed off with what I was doing in the band. And we were playing cabaret. I thought, I can't do this all my life. I really want to try and do something else. So you have to take that risk. And because of that risk, as fate would have it, I met someone who I've been writing with for 34 years.
And yet, as you said, it's a very strange relationship in the sense that you don't write together as such. I mean, he sends the lyrics and you could be in another country.
Yeah, well, I mean, technically, originally it was handwritten. I would get handwritten lyrics and then it would be typed, and now it's faxed.
Well, when going back to your song, and they took you to America and to Madison Square Garden, in fact, one of you played Madison Square Garden, I think I'm right in saying, with John Lennon, didn't you? When the last
1974.
That was one of the last concerts or appearances he must have made before.
Yes, it was. Yeah. It was the first time he'd played for years and years and years.
What do you remember of it?
It was for me, the most memorable concert I've ever given. A, because Madison Square Garden is a magical place. B, because I'd made this record with John called Whatever Gets You Through the Night, which was on Walls and Bridges. And I said, listen, if this gets to #1, you've got to come and sing on stage with me. That's part of the bargain. So I said, okay. And it got to #1, so he came up to Boston to see the show, and I came out in a kind of like a chocolate box outfit, with just, covering my bits with a chocolate box with heart and like hot pop pants, and he went, oh, bloody hell. And, we had a lot of equipment, but the sound had changed from, the big sound system And he said, oh, this is what it's all about, is it? But he kept his bargain, and we did 3 songs at Madison Square Garden. When he came out on stage, there was a 10-minute standing ovation and the hairs in the back of your neck. And it was great for him. He was so nervous before he went on. He was physically sick. But, you know, it was so emotional, and I'll never, ever forget it. Just to be on stage playing with a Beatle, you know? And I've been lucky enough to play with all 4 of them at various times. That was enough. I mean, but just to see how much people loved him and how excited they were to see him on stage again was fantastic.
I suppose, too, I mean, the American...
Same happened to me with Tessie O'Shea as well.
Well, yeah. I was going to ask you about Tessie O'Shea. Yeah. And Mrs. Mills, of course.
I am Tessie O'Shea, actually. And Mrs. Mills. I'm the right side. And Winifred Atwell. Yes, if they're bulky, I'm them.
Yeah,
right. Hattie Jake springs to mind
Hattie
as well.
Jakes, yes, indeed.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. But in America at that time, of course, I imagine the young man there, all your heroes would be there. I mean, you met Groucho Marx there too, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, when you get the opportunity to go to America, you meet all the people that are your peers in the music business, and people were very, very nice to me and very complimentary about my records and my stage performances. So I met people like the band and Bob Dylan and Paul Simon and people like that. And George Harrison very kindly sent me a telegram when my record was in the top 20, and I just couldn't believe it. My album was in the top 20, above his, All Things Must Pass. So it was an incredible time, and I got to meet Mae West, I got to meet Groucho Marx, I got to meet Josephine Baker.
How was Mae West? I never met Mae West.
I went to her apartment, and it was fantastic. It was completely white. The piano was white, the carpet was white, everything was white. And these 2 guys came out, like muscle builders in dinner suits, and gave us carrot cake and drinks. And they said, Miss West, we'll see you soon. And Miss West came in, eventually, dressed up to the nines in white, looking fabulous. We said, oh, wall-to-wall men. And then we talked for about 20, 30 minutes, and I went back again and saw her again, and it was magical.
What about, you mentioned there the costume that you met John Lennon in. I think my favourite of all, I saw you in Australia once, dressed as Marie Antoinette, I think it was, with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra.
It wasn't Marie Antoinette, it was bloody Chopin.
Oh, sorry.
Bloody hell. Oh, well, like you got my number right, though, right? To me, I thought I was Chopin, but to everybody else, I was Marie Antoinette. Story of my life. That was with the orchestra tour, with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, where the first half, I dressed with the mohawk wigs and everything like that, and I lost my voice, so I decided to do a 3.5-hour show. And the second half, I came out with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, and I dressed as Chopin or Mozart, whatever it was, or Marie Antoinette, and played with the symphony orchestra. And that was a wonderful tour, because playing live with an orchestra like that, we kind of resented you at first at rehearsal and thought, oh, well, this is going to be dreadful, but it was fantastic.
But what was the most memorable costume for you?
Well, the first time I met Sting, I was really embarrassed, because I met him at the Forum in Los Angeles, and I was dressed as Minnie Mouse, with a huge tail and big shoes, and I've got a picture of that, and he never lets me forget it. And then the other one was the Donald Duck at Central Park, because I came on for the encore dressed as Donald Duck, which was not my idea, but we hadn't had a run-through. You know, with costumes, you must have a run-through, because, you know, you have to get in and out of them very quickly. Well, Bob Halley, who's my personal assistant, or now he's gone above that, he's in the management team, but at that time he was my personal assistant. I got my arms in the leg holes and my legs in the armholes. And Bob has a wonderful sense of humour. If anyone's seen Tantrums and Tiaras, and we were crying with laughter, and I said, they'll all go away. He said, there's 500,000 people there, they're not going to go away. And I couldn't get the thing on, and we were laughing so much. Then I had to put the flippers on, and I came on stage and I kept tripping over the flippers. And then when I sat down at the piano, the bum was so big I couldn't reach the piano. It was a complete and utter disaster. And at that time, I think, you know, that was probably the time I should have retired the costumes. I went on too long, because initially it was fun, initially it was done on the spur of the moment, but then everything had to be bigger and better and glitzier, yes. and it really went too far.
Well, I think your 50th birthday party, didn't you have to hire a van to arrive in?
Not just a van, Michael, a furniture lorry,
yes. Because of the costume?
Because of the height of my wig, yes. It was much bigger than this one.
Oh, that was Marie Antoinette.
That was Marie Antoinette.
That's what I saw it, yes, of course.
No, he's getting older, you see.
You're right there,
no, it was a huge wig with a sailboat in it, which had steam coming out of it. We got into this lorry,
that's
David
why.
and I, and this weighed about 13 pounds this week. I mean, it was glued on, it had knitting needles, everything known to man. And it was a bit like the woman in The Simpsons. It was like, it was huge. So we got in the van and the lorry, and he went the wrong way. So instead of going from my house, which is very simple, to Hammersmith, which is about 3 minutes, he went via Hammersmith, which got, everyone was going to the party, and it was an hour and a quarter in the back of that. And every time the lorry moved, it went, the hair, or and I was just screaming with pain because it hurt so much. And at one point, I thought, no, I can't stand it anymore. I'm just going to take it off. And as I'm being lowered down, we had to be lowered down as we got to the Hammersmith Palais. And I was like Joan Crawford. I was like, and as I was being lowered down, I was like, and then went straight in upstairs, took it off, and put another one on. But it, never again.
You keep a keen eye still, do you, on the music scene?
All the time. I listen to everything. I go out and buy my own CDs. I love listening to younger people. I like to hear what's going on from what their perspective is. I listen to older stuff as well, but I'm really keen on listening to the new stuff.
What about, where do you put Mr. Robbie Williams in all this?
Robbie, I've been, you know, I was very fond of Take That, and I love Take That very much, and I was friends with them all. And when Robbie went solo, I knew he would be successful. And I remember him coming down to my house in Windsor and playing me the demos he'd written in the car, and I was very impressed with them before he even recorded his first album, which was Life Through a Lens. And he's done amazingly well. I mean, I knew he would. And, you know, he's made it so big as a singer and an artist, and the fact is he's a great entertainer. Yes. And you go and see a Robbie show, and he puts on such a great show. But I've always said that Robbie will turn out to be a fantastic actor. He's got so much talent, he can do anything.
All right, well, that's a nice lead-in to Mr. Williams, because he is here, as you know. So here is another of the great stars of modern music with his new single, Supreme, from the album Sing When You're Winning, and sung tonight in tribute to Elton John. Welcome, please, Robbie Williams.
Stop today. All the lonely hearts in London caught a plane and flew away. And all the best women are married, all the handsome men are gay. You feel deprived. Yeah. Are you questioning your size? Is there a tumor in your humor? Are the bags under your eyes? Do you leave dance where you sit? Are you getting on a bit? Will you survive? You must survive. Well, there's no love in town. This new century keeps bringing you down. All the places you have been, trying to find a love supreme, a love supreme. Looking for another partner in your life to abuse and to adore. Is it love, it's of his stuff? Or do you need a bit of rough? Get on your knees. Yeah, turn down the love songs that you hear, 'cause you can't avoid the sentiment that echoes in your ear. Saying love will stop the pain, saying love will kill the fear. Do you believe? You must believe. Well, there's no love in town. This new century keeps bringing you down. All the places you have been, trying to find a love supreme, a love supreme.
He's some performer, isn't he?
Well, he's only 25, and he's had 3 huge hit albums. I didn't really become successful until I was 23, so he's... and he was in Take That before. So, I mean, he's had an awful lot of success at an early age.
All right, let's pick up the conversation where we left off. We're talking about costumes, right?
Yes, that's right.
Uh-huh. And you made the point that they became different in a sense, that they lasted too long. Yeah. Let me investigate that, because first of all, why the costume? Was it just a teenage fantasy being enacted on stage?
Well, initially it was, yes. I mean, when I was a teenager, I wasn't really allowed to wear the clothes I wanted to wear. I mean, as far as winkle pickers and chisel-toed shoes and stuff like that. And I was probably not the right size to wear them as well. So when I became a performer, I was the right size. Miracle. And this shop in London called Mr. Freedom gave me all these hot pants and flying boots, and I was like a kid in a candy store. I could, actually wear what I wanted to do and no one could tell me not to wear them. And I think that was a lot of innocence and a lot of making up for lost time, as it were.
Yes.
And I did that for about 5 years, and it should have stopped then, because it was done all on instinct. It wasn't planning. And then after that, it became, oh, what can we wear on this tour? And I should have just, but I didn't.
And did it become a disguise as well, in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, I used to wear huge costumes to cover up the fact that I was big. And because, I looked like, it made me look even bigger. So it was kind of sad in a way. It wasn't, although I do like to dress up. I have a ritual before I go on stage. I can't just go on in street clothes. I like to put my outfit on before I go on stage. And I think most great performers, or most performers like Mick Jagger, Freddie Mercury, Robbie would tell you the same thing. It's, you have to prepare yourself to go on stage, and to do that, you have to get in uniform, as it were.
What about this business, this addiction you have to shopping? I mean, how big an addiction is it, and what does it result in?
Well, let's put it like this. I bought your house this afternoon.
But the same house, you can have it. I like to shop. I'm a huge collector. I collect lots of different things. What do you collect now?
I collect watches. I collect neckties. I collect photographs. I collect art. I collect cars.
But you had the most beautiful collection, which you sold, didn't you? You had all that Tiffany stuff.
I sold everything in 1989, and because I had so much of it. And when you're under the influence of drugs and drink, you buy so much crap. And I suddenly looked at it one day and went, I can't stand this anymore. I've got to get rid of it. And I sold it at Sotheby's. We had a week-long sale in 1989. And I kept 4 paintings, 2 by Patrick Proctor, a Francis Bacon, and a Magritte. And then I started again. And it kind of coincided when I got sober, and my taste changed completely.
Did the person change completely? I mean, when you come off, as you did, from being addicted to drugs and alcohol, what are you left with? Is it a different person?
Well, no, you're left with the same person, but you just have to, like being a baby, you have to start to walk again and learn how to become a human being and listen to instructions and follow them to try and put your life back together. Luckily, I'd made the decision, and I listened to people, which I don't normally do, for a year or so, well, more than a year or so, and I did take the precautions of listening to what they had to say, and I did everything they had to tell me to do, and my life came back together. It was just like, I've got to learn how to live and how to, do things right, and change my life completely.
When did you first do drugs? How young were you?
God, I mean, it was about, I was 28, probably.
28?
Yeah. I wasn't an early starter, but I wasn't an early starter anyway. I didn't have sex till I was 23.
So the two weren't coincidental.
But then I made up for lost time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, so how bad was it in those days?
In the early days, it wasn't too bad, and we had fun, and it was not. But drugs lead to very irrational decisions about one's personal partners, about and it became worse and worse and worse. And at the end, it was just I wasn't even getting any enjoyment out of it. I was just doing it just for the sake of it.
Were there lost years, lost concerts?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I do regret from being, when I've been sober 10 years now and clean, and they've been the best 10 years of my life in a way, because, I look at things from a different perspective. And also, I think getting older, you look at things from a different perspective, and I enjoy that. I do, noticing so much now. Life is, Gianni Versace, who's my dear friend, taught me that, life is to be taken in. You must take in things at every moment. You must look at things, you must explore things, you must go and see things, you must enjoy what life has to offer, because life has to offer so many abundantly good things. And we always hear about the negativity when we watch the news, but there are so many beautiful things to see. Johnny would say, listen, I have 10 minutes, you must come and see this church fresco, you must see this mosaic, you must see this museum, you must see this building, you must do this. And before that, I'd never done things like that. I just shut the curtains and turned everything off. And, I started collecting photography in 1991, and I'd never noticed photography, and yet I was in an industry that, surrounded itself with photography, and I never noticed it as an art form or knew nothing about it. So you completely look at things from different perspectives, your eyes open, and you have this thirst, and you want to make up for the time that you've lost.
He was a key figure in your life, wasn't he, Versace?
Yes.
He and, Graham Taylor?
Yeah, I've had kind of three brother figures in my life, Bernie Taupin, Graham Taylor, and Gianni Versace. And three of them have had a huge impact on my life. Graham, because of the wonderful times we've had together in taking Watford from the 4th division to the 1st, getting to the cup final, and we've always been friends, and and watching him go through the pain of the England job and trying to coax him back into football again, and coming back to Watford. And he's been an extremely important figure in my life, and a man that I really love very, very much. And we have a really good relationship. And Gianni was the same. It's kind of like they were the three brothers that I never had.
I was around for a while when you were at Watford with Graham, and he was very stern with you, wasn't he, about drugs?
He was very honest. He didn't about drugs. He didn't know I was on drugs, but he knew I was on drink. And I would turn up, and he said, one day he just put a bottle of brandy in front of me. He said, come on, why don't you drink the old bottle? He said, that's what you like. He said, if you turn up for another first team game looking like you did on Boxing Day, he said, I'll have you. And I was so astonished that someone could talk to me like that. And I actually took it, I thought, God, I mustn't do this again, because, I did turn up, unshaven and, not wearing a suit and tie with it. And you have to do that when you're chairman of a football club. You have to show the club some respect. It's
interesting, but as chairman of the football club, you actually didn't go there after taking cocaine or anything like that. That was a little rule.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did used to drink there, but never, no. It was, my football club is sacrosanct to me. I loved the club. It's given me so much pleasure during my life. I'm still chairman. I don't get to see hardly any matches because I'm touring so much. But, at least the club is in good hands now. It's not just relying on me. It has a great board of directors, has a great manager, has a good team, and we're doing very, very well. And I'm part of it, and I'm very proud to be part of it. And I wouldn't have missed those years for anything. They were magic.
What about of course, at the same time as well, you had a lot, didn't you? Every addiction. I understand you're bulimic as well.
I was indeed, yes. And
what kind of diet were you on?
It was pretty gross, actually. I mean, I would stay up for like 2 or 3 days taking drugs, and then because I wouldn't be eating, and I'd be drinking scotch. And then I'd go to sleep for about 2 days, and then I'd get up and I'd be ravenously hungry, so I'd have, it was, Sainsbury's cockles.
Sainsbury's cockles?
Yes. I like a nice cockle, Michael.
Just Sainsbury's cockles?
Yeah, jars of Sainsbury's cockles, yes. And then Haagen-Dazs ice cream, and then a bacon sandwich, and then I'd throw it up. They're horrible. It's the most horrible addiction. And, the thing was, I would hurry because I didn't want to put on weight, and I already looked like, Tessie O'Shea. and Widdicombe, yes, right. Yes.
Marie Antoinette.
Yeah, Marie Antoinette.
But, I mean, you mentioned earlier, too, about the effect that drugs have on those surrounding you. It's not just you. There's a ripple effect, isn't there?
Yeah.
What was the worst aspect of that? I mean, your mum actually cleared off, did she?
My mum moved to Spain. Can't blame her. The worst thing about taking drugs and your friends is that your real friends, you isolate them and you hang around with people that aren't your real friends, and they're just sponging off you. Someone in my position who's quite wealthy, would buy all the drugs or, provide all the booze. And people, my dearest friends who still work for me, did tell me, but I wouldn't listen. And so I didn't want to hear their views anymore, so I kind of shut them out of my life and just listened to the sycophants that I was hanging around with. And I'm afraid that's what happens. You shut the real friends who will be honest with you and tell you what they think of you. For example, Mike Hewittson's a dear friend of mine. He works for me still. He wrote me a letter saying, for Christ's sake, stop putting that stuff up your nose. And I wouldn't speak to him for a year. I was so enraged. But I knew he was right. But, you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear the truth.
So what brought you face to face with the truth? What was it?
One of my ex-partners in Atlanta went into a treatment center in America. And I was so angry about it. And I went to see him there. And then I came back to England for 2 weeks, and I was so furious that he'd gone. And I just thought, oh, he's going to get well, and I'm still doing this stuff. And I was very angry, and eventually I found him, and I went to see him at a halfway house, which is where they put you after a treatment center sometimes. And I had a confrontation with him, and we were like close knee to knee, and a counselor for him and a counselor for me, and they just asked me questions. And he busted me completely. He thought I was going to hit him or walk out the room, which was probably my normal behavior. But I actually just stood there and took it and decided from that moment on that he was right and this is what I should do.
Well, he told you what was wrong with you?
Yeah, he said, you're a bulimic, you're a drug addict, you're an alcoholic, you're a liar. And he had to write a list of everything that was wrong with me, and it went on for ages. And then I had to write a list of what was wrong with him, and the only thing I could put was, does not put CDs back in the cover. And it was, I needed to be told. I was ready for it, and I knew what was going to happen. I'm not stupid. I knew I was going there to be confronted about this, and basically he saved my life, and I decided that point in time that I would seek help, and it's been fantastic ever since.
Part of that therapy too, I read, which I thought was quite interesting, was that to begin, you had to actually write a letter to the drug.
I wrote to all the people that I thought I'd, mistreated and apologized. You have to, and I've never written anything down in personal detail before. I had to write farewell letters. I had to write history of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and stuff like that. And then I wrote a farewell letter to cocaine off my own back, which I still have. And it was, I was very proud of it, and it said everything that I wanted to say.
I mean, what did you say?
Well, I just said, I put cocaine in the sense that he was my mistress, and that I was in love with it, and I couldn't see her anymore, and that I'd traveled around the world, and I'd brought her over by private jet. I had people bring her to me, and I couldn't afford to do it. And I said, if I see you in another room, if I walk into a room again and I see that you're there, I'll walk out. And I just had to, I wrote it as if I was talking to a person. Because that's how serious it was. And, it's a hard thing to kick an addiction is horrible, no matter what kind of addiction it is.
And is it still tough? 10 years off now?
No, it's not tough at all. No, not considering the life that I have. It's so magical, and I have a partner that I've been with for 7 years. My career couldn't be better. I'm happy. I have the most wonderful life. I'm so lucky. And everything I have, and I appreciate it, and things couldn't be better. Why would I possibly want to ruin it all by going back? The only thing sometimes I will say, I do miss a glass of red wine. I think that's a very civilized thing to have a glass of red wine with your food. But you know what? I'm not the sort of person that can have one glass of red wine. I'd have to have 2 bottles, and I know that. And I just think, why sabotage everything I've worked for now? And it's not worth it. I'm very happy the way I am. I don't miss it.
David Furnish has been a key influence in your life, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He's been crucial to your recovery.
Well, before that, all my relationships were disaster areas, really, because I chased them and I spoilt the person, and I made them give up their jobs and follow me around the world, which is it's no life for anybody. I mean, I make a joke about it now, but it was like a conveyor belt. You buy them the Cartier watch, the Versace suit, and they come out on a conveyor belt with their Louis Vuitton luggage, and then you take them on the road for 3 or 4 months, and they have no respect for themselves because they're not doing anything. They feel worthless, and it's a very hard position for them to be in. So I've ruined a few people's lives by doing that. And in this case, David kind of found me by accident, and had a job, and had a 9-to-5 job, and a very successful job, and a career. And I'd never been out with anybody really before who had a career, or had their own independence. And a relationship is 50-50, and it's different being with someone like me, because I'm not your normal person. I'm a very high profile person, but David was very adamant that he had to keep his career, and wanted to have a 9-to-5 job.
And was it he who persuaded you to be as frank as you were in that Tantrums and Tiaras?
No, it wasn't him. I mean, David, I want you to make a documentary about me, and I want it to be warts and all. And I've been asked to do the South Bank show, and I've been asked to do several documentary things. And those programs are all well and good, but you always see the good side of people, and you never see the bad. And you always get a kind of sugar coating about what a person's like. And no matter what if you see the biography channel or whatever, you learn a lot about a person, but you don't really learn, they come out as holier than thou. And we're monsters sometimes, performers. We're absolute monsters. And irrational and funny. And you see, that was when I saw the completed thing, I thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen, and people said, but your behaviour was so bad. I said, I know, it's hysterical, it's so ridiculously awful. But I mean, I found it hilariously funny, and I could actually watch it, because it was the first true thing I'd ever seen about me. And you know, yes, here I was, I'm imperfect, I'm stupid sometimes, and I'm completely irrational, but at the end of the day, it was how I wanted to present myself.
May I ask you about Renata when you talk about relationships? I mean, you married Renata.
Yes.
I went to the wedding.
You were at the wedding?
I was.
Yes.
Was.
You were bridesmaid?
I was
yes.
a bridesmaid.
Always a bridesmaid, yes.
Yes. It was a good wedding.
It was a great wedding.
So, but, I mean, was that about drugs? Was that about an irrational decision made by?
I have to be very careful about this, because Renata is probably one of the most special people I've ever met in my life. When you take that amount of drugs, and you're unhappy, you think I'll do this and it will change everything. I'll move here, I'll do this, I'll buy a house, I'll get married, I'll be in another relationship. It will all change. Because it didn't change, because I never gave up taking the drugs. So the marriage was doomed from the word go. We did have some very, very happy times together. And I think she's probably one of the most special people I've ever met in my life, and I adore her. And she's been the best. And we do communicate now, and after a period of time when she just wanted to be on her own. I've only seen her once since we got divorced, but it was very special. And basically, I thought it would change me if I got married, and I would be happy. But you can't change unless you change yourself. And unfortunately, she loved me very much, and it did her a lot of harm, because she did actually love me. And I did love her, but, you know, you can't live a lie. And I was a gay man, and I just thought that would be great. You know, very rational, off-the-cuff decisions. I mean, you were there. I was getting married. I was married within 3 days, which in Australia you have to get special dispensation from Kerry Packer.
If he's not there, Rupert Murdoch.
Right, exactly. Yes, yes. So, but it's something that I don't regret, because we had a lot of great times together, and someone special came into my life, and she is a special person.
Did you ever think, or have you ever thought, David, yourself, about children, about adopting children?
Well, David just went to Africa to see the places that we give money to from the AIDS Foundation, and he went to South Africa and Kenya and spent 2.5 weeks there. And, you know, there are so many orphans over there. He brought back a picture of this little boy who's the cutest, you know, 4-year-old little boy called Elton, funnily enough. And it's so tempting to say, well, it'd be lovely to adopt this boy. But on the other hand, I'm 53, nearly 54. I'm very set in my ways. I would rather, what I'd like to do with this boy is educate him, send him to a good school in Kenya or South Africa, and because to bring a 4-year-old into the limelight over here and completely change his world, I don't think I could cope with it. I don't know if he could cope with it, and I just think it would be unfair. However, looking at the picture, I would love to do something with this child, and maybe I can do this as a kind of a godparent type role.
It's going to come patron.
Yeah, but you know, I travel around so much. What life is that for a child? Yes. I'm selfish. I'm 53, and I love kids. I like kids. I mean, not that I don't like kids, but you know, it's a very big commitment, and I don't think I could do it.
The work you do for AIDS, you must find very fulfilling.
Yes, because in a way, part of the reason I got sober was Ryan White, the boy who died in America. I became very friendly with him and spent the last week of his life at the hospital with his family.
Just remind us, he was a
hemophiliac who got a blood transfusion with HIV, and he was barred from school. They wouldn't let him go. It was when AIDS was all about ignorance, and he lived in Indiana. And I just was in a doctor's surgery one night, and I was reading this article in Newsweek or Time. And I was enraged because people wouldn't let him go to school because he had HIV, and they were throwing bricks through his window. And so I got to know the family. We helped them move house to another place, and I got to know Jeannie, his mother, and his sister, Andrea. And we, followed him right up to his death. And what I found so amazing with his family was that here was I, who was, extremely irritable about anything, and would walk into a hotel and say, oh God, wrong room, can't stand the wallpaper, blah, blah, blah. And this family who'd had all this abuse hurled at them and had the ability to forgive the people who came to the funeral and who came to pay their respects, to say they were wrong, and they had this amazing ability to forgive. And I just thought, well, your life is so you know, what kind of life do you lead? These people are so special. You couldn't meet more special people. And I just knew then, 6 months later, I was sober, but that was kind of one of the nails in the coffin. And so when I did get sober, I wanted to do something to make up for the years that I'd squandered. I mean, I can't lead a more blessed life than I lead. So, you know, and after all the bloody money I've shoved up my hooter, it's a wonder it hasn't fallen off, you know. It's a very delicate nose, and it's amazing, really.
It's looking all right, mate.
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, a bit more music now, I think.
All right.
We're celebrating your musical talents tonight. And the song from, well, you and Kiki D did this originally, and you're doing it, or redone it, in the Madison Square Garden concert, which is now on CD.
Yeah, and also it was covered by Arthur Mullard and Hilda Baker.
Was it?
Yeah.
Was it? Oh,
and that's probably what we look like now, right?
Kiki D's over there. Elton John, Kiki D. Okay, so we're coming toward the end of our meeting, which I much enjoyed. It's been great. What about song writing, or writing with Tim Rice and writing things like Aida, which you've done, and the other Disney work? Is that going to stage and film work? Is that going to take more of your time up in the future? Is that how you see it?
Well, I hope so, because it gives you another, thing to do that's different from what I normally do. And when I did The Lion King with Tim, it opened so many doors for me. It meant that I could do film scores. It meant that we wrote Aida for the stage, especially. The Lion King obviously had gone on stage before that, but it meant that Aida, which was a very special project for me and Tim, finally made it to Broadway, and it's the second biggest show after The Lion King. So that's something I'm really proud of, and never thought I'd end up in Broadway. It's always nice to find new things to try and do. Some of them you do well, some of them you don't, but it's always nice to try them.
I read somewhere where you said that your life's been one long search for the perfect song.
Yes, exactly.
And we're still looking, are we?
The perfect weight, yes. Yes.
And we're still looking for the perfect
yes,
song.
absolutely.
There isn't such a thing as a perfect song.
I don't think there is, but in your mind there is. There's always a song. I mean, Yesterday's a perfect song, isn't it? I mean, you couldn't get a better song than that, the way it's constructed. That is a perfect song. And you're always searching, the songwriter is always searching to write a better song or to find a song that moves him. And you'll write 10 or 20 songs in a session for an album, and maybe one of those songs will come out, or maybe two, and maybe none. And it's only very few of the songs that I've written are special songs.
Let's talk a bit now about musical inspirations, because we mentioned some great names.
Yeah.
Musical, Arthur Mullard had been one.
Yes, exactly.
Hattie Jakes.
Yeah.
Winifred Atwell.
Winifred Atwell,
Yes.
huge influence.
She was an influence, wasn't she?
Absolutely.
Could you demonstrate how?
Well, it was just that she always had these... We'd watch her on television, and she would play a grand piano, and then she would say, and now I'm going over to my other piano. And she would play this really nice piece on the grand piano, and then she would go over to the sort of... What do they call those things that they kind of had tacks in them, so it made it sound very like an old Western saloon. Yes. And she would go... That, and let's have a party, and because that's where I got all my pub stuff from, you know.
Yeah. The band, and don't Kelly Dolly on the way. Russ Conway?
I love Russ Conway, and Russ Conway's not very well at the moment, apparently.
Is he not?
No, he's in hospital, so, oh yes, a side saddle. Russ. Get well soon.
Now,
you got a bit hairier after that. Jerry Lee Lewis and Fats Domino. Little Richard and all Ray Charles and gospelly stuff.
Ray Charles.
Yeah.
Oh, great hero of mine, Ray Charles.
Yeah.
You were talking earlier about writing songs with Bernie and saying that he'd just give you a lyric and you look at it and then you write it. So...
Oh, no.
Yes, I asked the... You've not seen this. You might wish you'd never seen it, actually. Right. But we asked a couple of our researchers to write something which was about the fact that your mother lives in the river where we live, and also that the river is overflowing. And they've come up with, mothers, dear mothers, our love flows for you, like rivers that course ever true. The banks they have burst with the downpouring rain, there's something unpleasant, it's blocking the drains. The carpets are soggy, where is poor Moggy? We're trying to reach you, a boat's on the way, but the skipper's found a pub which has caused a delay. Keep filling those sandbags, keep stacking them high, and we'll be right with you once we've sucked this place dry. Now, there's a lyric.
Oh, and what a lyric.
And what a lyric. There you are, sir. And I just wonder what you might do with that. Yes, you don't.
Oh, I could think of 2 or 3 things immediately. Mothers, dear mothers, our love flows for you like rivers that course ever true. The banks, they burst with the downpouring rain, and there's something unpleasant that's blocking the drains.
out trying to reach you, and the boat is on the way, but the skipper's found a pup which of course doesn't lay. Keep filling those sandbanks, keep stacking them high, and we'll be right with you when we suck this place dry.
Brilliant. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Listen, that could be a hit. Could be our next single.
Don't get any ideas,
No,
Michael.
right.
I can see The Lion Queen, written by Michael Parkinson and Elton John. I can see him now.
Now listen, my favourite song to end with. I've got a favourite song of yours.
This year for Christmas, I got Santa's Winky, right? It's one of my... I won't do that one, that's all right.
You know it is, because we talked about it many times before. It's Rocket Man. I love
right.
Rocket Man.
No.
Now, I mean, again, this just arrived, a lyric, and you just sat down in 10 minutes, was it, or what?
It's never usually more than 35, 40 minutes. I come back to things. If it's a great lyric and I can't get it straight away, and I'll say, well, I'm not going to sweat blood over it for an hour and a half. I'll come back to it later in the day or tomorrow. But I never really spend more than 45 minutes on a lyric. And if there's nothing happening with it, I'll just abandon it or come back to it or just forget it completely. But if it's a special lyric, then usually if it's the special lyrics like this one will come very quickly.
Really?
Yeah.
And then
A bit like that last one, really.
this is one of your favourite songs too, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yes. And this was on an album called Honky Chateau, and I just added Davey Johnson as a guitarist to the band. So it's the first time I'd played in a band with a guitar, because I was piano, bass and drums before. A bit like the Headley Ward Trio, I suppose.
A fond memory.
Right.
Yeah. OK, so Rocket Man?
Yeah.
She packed my bags last night, pre-flight. 0 hour, 9 a.m. And I'm gonna be high as a kite by then. I miss the earth so much, I miss my wife. It's lonely out in space, on such a timeless flight. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man I think I am at home. Oh, I'm a rocket man, I'm burning out his fuse up here alone. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man that think I am at home. Oh, I am a rocket man, I'm burning out his fuse up here alone. Bars ain't the kind of place to raise your kids. In fact, it's cold as hell, and there's no one there to raise them. If you did, and all this science, I don't understand. It's just my job 5 days a week. A rocket man, oh, rocket man. I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me around again to find I'm not the man I think I am at home. Oh, I'm a rocket man, a rocket man. I'm burning out as fuse I've had alone. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me around again to find I'm not the man that think I am at home. Oh no, I am a rocket man, a rocket man. I'm burning out a fuse I've had alone. Oh yeah, and I think it's gonna be a long, long time. It's gonna be a long, long time. Long, long time. It's gonna be a long, long time. 'Cause I'm a rocket, I'm a rocket, I'm a rocket, rocket man.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, thank you. That was wonderful. I really enjoyed tonight. It's marvellous, and thank you for spending all that time with us. So thank you for watching, and from all of us here, a very good night. Good night.